Welcome to this webinar on HR analytics driving retention. I thank you all for taking out time to attend this webinar, and we'll be starting now in few minutes. But before we start, let's quickly first set some ground rules for this webinar. Now, this webinar would be for a duration of about an hour. And in this webinar, I'll take you through a journey of how analytics is driving retention, a very, very important aspect of how strategic HR is being driven through HR analytics. This is something that we would be talking about. How one of the key problem is being solved is something that I would talk about. And what I would do is that I would take you through this journey, and towards the end, I'll leave the floor open for questions, right? So if you have any doubts, if you have any concerns, if you have any thoughts, if you want to know about something, if you have any clarifications, please feel free to ask towards the end of the webinar. I'll give ample time for all questions to be asked, and I'll answer every question that gets posted in the Q&A box. So remember, the Q&A box, there is a Q&A box that you can go about seeing. You can type all your questions in there. In fact, even while attending the webinar, just in case you have some doubt and you want to know about some element, type in there, and towards the end, again, I'll take it across for you, right? Also, in between, I would be checking for a quick yes in terms of if you're able to see me, if you're able to hear me, if you're able to see my screen, and a quick yes would make sure that we are all set to go ahead, right? So a quick yes from all of you are able to see me, all of you are able to hear, all of you are able to also see my screen. Quick yes, guys. Wonderful, great. Thank you so much for the quick yeses. That's wonderful. That's all that we need to go ahead with the webinar. And just in case if somebody logs out, remember that you can always view this webinar live on Facebook. It is available on facebook.com/CHRMP. A lot of times when you want to log in back, if the classroom is full, you may not be able to enter again, but you can do that in facebook.com/CHRMP. However, I always recommend that if you are here, that's the best thing to do, because you are able to interact with me and you are able to clarify your questions. So that is something that is always advisable, right? Also, for viewers who are listening on Facebook, just in case you want to post this in any group that you are part of, any HR society that you're part of, on your timeline, start a watch party, please feel free to do that. Let's spread some knowledge, right? Okay, wonderful. Now let's start without wasting any more time. So this webinar is brought to you by CHRMP. CHRMP stands for Certified Human Resource Management Professional. You can always go to www.chrmp.com to know about CHRMP certifications. CHRMP certifications are globally recognized. CHRMP is a competency-based HR certification, which makes it a premier HR certification. There is a lot that is changing in field of HR. Department names have changed. You have training and development being called talent development, and recruitment being called talent acquisition. In fact, human resource management being called talent management. And competency-based HR is driving this change for good. So CHRMP brings about what any HR professional needs to know in terms of what's going to happen next in HR, right? We are talking about 5,600 test centers in 190 countries. Our certification partner is Pearson VUE, and we have more than 10,000 strong alumni base that makes you go to LinkedIn, type CHRMP, you would be able to see right from HR directors to HR executives to HR VPs to talent acquisition heads to HR trainees you'll be able to find a CHRMP and all across, right? Now, when we talk about me, my name is Animesh. I come with about 17 years of work experience in human resource management. I have worked with various organizations and consulted number of Fortune 100, Fortune 10 companies in terms of setting up with their HR processes, conducting HR audits, and also helping them set up HR analytics vertical. And I would be the lead facilitator for you today in this webinar. And apart from sharing our experience as a certification body and as consulting partners to a number of companies, I would be taking you through a journey where you would understand how things gets driven in human resource management. So via HR analytics, right? So this is something that we will be doing today. Now, before I get into this webinar, I always start this webinar by first making a quick promise. I think by end of this webinar, you would understand what changes analytics is doing to drive retention, such an important aspect for business continuity and success of organizations. So that is something that I would be talking about. But apart from that, I think this would make complete sense to you if you are able to give in your 100% to next 1 hour. So I would request, be away from all distractions, give your complete attention to this webinar, because each slide is loaded with information. And if you miss one, maybe the next few slides would not make sense, right? So just an hour, and let's see how what understanding we are able to create in terms of field of HR analytics and how it drives retention. Also towards the end, I have a wonderful surprise for all of you. And that is something for people who stay till the end, right? Now, before I start, I always talk about some myths. These myths are something that keeps people worried about what's changing in field of human resource, and they feel that HR analytics is not something that that's meant for them, or the whole this vertical or domain of HR analytics looks a little mysterious. So I have to burst these myths, because these it's stopping a lot of people achieve their true potential. So when we talk about HR analytics, I think first myth that we need to burst is that HR analytics is for people who are good with mathematics, right? For a lot of people, a lot of us HR professionals, the reason of getting into HR was that we loved interacting with people, and also because a lot of us were scared of mathematics, right? And then here comes analytics, which brings and talks and looks like all about maths. But then the good part is that HR analytics is not about complex mathematics. It's not about permutation and combination and sine theta and cosec theta and trigonometry and geometry and linear equation with two variables. Certainly not the scary part of maths. Yes, it does involve basic arithmetic. It does involve basic statistics. But I think basic arithmetic and basic statistics is much easier for us to comprehend, to implement, to read, to analyze, to understand. We have help of calculators, unlike in school where we could not carry them for examinations. So it does bring a lot of, it makes it very, very easy. So anybody who thought that if analytics was about aptitude and logical ability, and it was about analyzing and it was numbers, then don't be scared, because it's very, very simple understanding of mathematics that we are talking about, and we already have that understanding. So we need not get really bogged down by this thought, right? The second myth that we need to burst is that you need to know programming to be good at HR analytics. And whenever I talk about this whole idea of programming for HR analytics, it reminds me of 10 to 12 years back when we were when HR analytics was a very, very new word. In fact, they were not looking at HRs do HR analytics. They were looking at business folks and operations folks do HR analytics. And And yes, business folks and operations folks did have this exposure to softwares and to programming, etc. And this was the thought of the organization as well, that we have to churn HR data and these guys can do it well. However, they were not able to do it well, and data-driven HR did not work the way the organization wanted it to be. It was not able to give them credible solutions to the talent-related problems the organizations were facing. And the simple reason being that these folks did not understand the human element for it. Right. So then organizations were left with the choice that, do you want HR analytics where people understand the human element of it, or you want great programming skills where people do not have understanding of human element? And I think organizations chose the first option. So here are we HRs driving HR analytics in different organizations. And we don't need programming skills. We don't need Java. We don't need .NET. We don't need C or C++ or any other language for that sake, right? We don't need developmental software development or software testing skills. We do need some technology exposure. That's important, right? Because we have to communicate the data. We need to know how to create this beautiful, amazing looking dashboards. And we need to know how to build stories around that and how different data can be projected and communicated. So we do need data visualization tools. We do need data representation tools. So tools like Power BI, tools like Tableau are very, very important for people in HR analytics to know. But it does not mean you need programming. And these tools are not as difficult as a lot of people fear it to be. These tools are fairly simple, and with some exposure and some understanding to it, I think these skills can be easily mastered, right? So that is something that you can really be sure of. So no maths, no complex maths, and no crazy programming. If this is what is keeping you away from HR analytics, then the good news is that you need not stay away from HR analytics, because HR analytics is not what it looks like or what you think it looks like, right? And the third myth that is very, very important for us to burst is that a lot of HR professionals feel that HR analytics is important. There is something good that is happening, and I think there is this whole new buzz about HR analytics. However, is it really relevant to my current role? Am I really doing HR analytics? Would it make any difference in terms of what I am doing? So let me give you some data around it. I think when we talk about organizations are largely implementing HR analytics in two ways. Either they are coming up with a separate COE, which means Center of Excellence, a different department altogether, which is driving HR analytics within the organization, or organizations are largely coming up with HR analytics in every vertical in HR that we are talking about, right? So, for example, when we are going and conducting sessions for different organizations, different multinationals and different companies, we are not training only HR analytics folks. We are training people who are in recruitment, and we are training people who are in performance management, and we are training people who are in learning and development or talent development. We are training people who are in comp and ben. So they are looking at developing analytical skills and HR analytics specific understanding for either all these people in different verticals within HR, which means all subdomains of HR, or they are also either looking at creating a different COE altogether, which just works like how training and development department works or how talent acquisition department works, the same way HR analytics would work. So either way, I think analytics knowledge is important, because even if somebody is coordinating with analytics COE, they need to know some specifics and basics of analytics. If you don't know, how would you be able to execute and implement the data, the information that the HR analytics needs, right? One way or the other, it is something that's going to be very, very important. It is something which still, as we talk, is very, very important, right? And a lot of times people do feel that what I'm currently doing doesn't involve analytics. I always tell them that there is some analytics that we are already doing which we are not aware of. We are just not calling it analytics, right? And also a reason is that a lot of us probably are in not the right jobs and not the right organizations, because when we talk about the best jobs in HR and when we talk about the best organizations in human resource, they are increasingly involving data-based, evidence-based HR practices, and this is not done in isolation of a department alone. It is done in each and every subdomain of HR, right? So if somebody wants to work with the best of organization, if somebody wants best of salaries and best of pays, I think analytics is an X factor today for any HR to possess, which is very, very important, right? So these three myths are important, and I always spend some time on it because I always feel that there is a lot of misperception about HR analytics as a topic, and we need to get rid of this misperception, because what analytics is doing is beautiful. In fact, when you talk about journey of HR, right, and you can go and probably Google it and see how the journey of HR looks like, right, and starts with second industrial revolution when we had mass employment for the first time. Earlier, it was only armies which were hiring people and had a hierarchy and had a pyramidal structure with mass employment, right? From that time, from being a labor manager to a welfare officer to this whole idea of 40s to end of 70s of PM and IR, which is personnel management and industrial relation. In fact, it was so popular that, I mean, human resources is a very, very new term. It is hardly 30, 40 years old, right? So in fact, you have a lot of universities in different parts of the world still offering post-graduation courses in PM and IR, personal management and industrial relation, isn't it? So when we talk about human resource management, came in 80s, evolved for good, diversified its options, started working as a support system for entire employee life cycle, which means right from a person getting into the organization to person going out of the organization. Entire support structure was human resource. And I think early 2000, and especially in last 5 to 7 years, we are talking about strategic HRM, right? So all this while from end of 70s to 2005, 2010, 2015, what HRs have largely been doing is implementing what the business is telling them to do. Business is giving them requirement, go and hire 10 software engineers, go and conduct this training program for these many folks, find a vendor, execute, implement, right? So largely strategy in HR has been about implementing what the business wants in the quickest, fastest, cheapest, or most cost-effective way possible, right? But it's changing now, right? Because when we talk about human resource today, when we talk about strategic HRM today, it's not about executing what business tells you to, right? Or I would say it's not only about executing what business tells you to. It's about making an informed decision, and in fact, helping the business make an informed decision. So if, for example, somebody comes and tells you that we need to hire 10 software engineers, you can do a workload analysis and you can get to know whether the team is overstaffed or understaffed, or the decision of 10 people being hired is correct or not, right? You can link it to compensation and drive a strategy where overall cost could be saved, even if the team is needing more people, and you end up helping them, or the organization does get more people in, right? So if it's about creating a fat team or a fit team, if it's about creating a great work culture where people are not overburdened but also does not have less work, I think all these decisions can be made by HR analytics, or it can help business make the decision, which means you can go back and tell the business that the realization level and utilization level of the teams that you're talking about, where vacancies are, is merely 50 or 55%. I think it should be about 75 or 80%. Because if it's not 75 and 80%, then it doesn't make sense to hire more people. So that's the tone that I'm talking about, right? So this is what HR analytics is bringing on table. And two things that is driving this is the HRBP model, which means organizations moving from the traditional HR model to the strategic HR model. And second is HR analytics. So this two things coming together actually is really driving this whole idea of strategic HR. And strategic HR now is not only about how soon and at what cost we can implement what business wants. It is an advisory role, it is a consulting role, and it is a role which I think any HR would love to be part of, because it is an awesome place to be in. The kind of work that HRs are doing today is commendable, and we are holding hands with the business, walking ahead. Their goals are our goals. The way we go about supporting them, it's something which is incredible, right? So very important, guys, that we understand that the best of HR jobs, the best of the work that you would be doing in future would involve these skills. So we should aim at upskilling ourselves when it comes to HR analytics, right? Now, as I talk about HR analytics again, and just a brief that I gave you in terms of what's changing and how HR is moving towards strategic HR, I think the difference between analysis and analytics, to know this is also very important, right? So when we talk about analysis and analytics, these are two different things. Analysis is about looking backward in time of what happened and why it happened. Analytics, on the other hand, is talking about what will happen in the future. So the whole approach is different. The tools that you use are different. The way you run it is different, right? In analysis, we are talking about you getting into describing what has happened and then diagnosing the reason of why it has happened. In analytics, you go about reading those reasons, you go about seeing the patterns, the trends, and then you make a prediction of what is most likely to happen. And then you can run simulations and you can tell them that if you don't want this to happen, if you want something else to happen, these are the solutions that are there in front of you, and you help the business make better decisions, right? So this basic understanding of analysis and analytics, the difference is also very important, because analytics is interacting with analysis to know the why, but the reason is to predict or the future, or give options to the business to be able to make better intelligent decisions, right? Everyone with me? Everyone able to hear me? Everyone able to see my screen? All going good? A quick yes on the chat box would really help. Great, thank you. Awesome, right? That's great. Now let's move ahead and let's talk about retention and employee turnover, right? Now, I think one of the key challenges that anybody wants to solve is retention, right? It's about people staying in your organization. One of the key principles organizations are aiming at in terms of business continuity is longevity of people in the organization, especially performing people, right? So when we talk about retention, when we talk about people staying in the organization, when we talk about business goals being aligned with retention, because any organizations to grow needs a great foundation, and that foundation comes not necessarily from sound business processes, but people who are implementing those processes, which means a sound foundation will only come if there is stability in the organization in form of employees having a minimum duration within the organization, because that's when they would be able to help organization achieve growth, achieve success, and reach its targets, right? So retention is very key. In fact, one of the key challenges And one of the key things that you see in the KPIs of a CEO as well is how they have been able to drive retention, or what has been the retention matrix when it comes to even the top guy sitting is something that comes across, right? So now when we talk about retention, we have to understand about employee turnover as well. We need to talk about employee turnover as well, because employee turnover is representation of what's opposite to retention, right? So if retention is about making people stay, attrition is about people leaving and going the organization, and that is what we are looking at controlling. For retention to happen, we have to control attrition, and the right terminology for attrition is employee turnover. Some organizations also call it employee churn. I prefer calling it employee turnover, and the reason is that a lot of times when you ask somebody what is attrition, people say people quitting and going an organization is attrition. So that's a wrong definition, or it's a half a definition, because when we talk about employee turnover, it's not only people quitting and going or leaving and going. It is about people quitting and going who needs to be replaced, right? Which means people are going and they need to be replaced. And this is a very, very important aspect, because retrenchment is not employee turnover or attrition, and your layoffs are not employee turnover. No, these are not, right? These are welcome moves, because organization would get to save on manpower cost, right? And because of technology or whatever reason, they don't need it, right? Need more people. So employee turnover is different from retrenchment. It's different from layoff, and this is a basic understanding that people are leaving and they need to be replaced, and that is something that is the true understanding of attrition or employee turnover. And controlling attrition and controlling employee turnover then becomes the key to drive retention, right? Now, how is attrition calculated then? One of the key metric that is there is this. This is how attrition rates are calculated, right? Attrition rates are calculated as number of employees who left the workforce divided by average number of employees into 100. This is how exactly it's calculated. So for example, if we are talking about 100 employees and 10 people leaving the workforce, and the average number of employees during the entire month was, let's say, 95, then it is 90. 10 divided by 95 into 100 is something that would be your attrition rate. Now let's get deeper into this so that this understanding becomes clear. Now, number of employees leaving the workforce, that is very, very simple, because we have exact idea of how many people are leaving. Now, whether they are being terminated, whether they have put down their papers, they are leaving, whether you have not confirmed an employee, even if somebody just vanishes, right? You all of this data can come across in terms of number of employees who left the workforce. Now, average number of employees is something that needs some thought, right? Because we are talking about average number of employees. So the historical method of calculating average number of employees was very, very simple. It said, and there are different ways this denominator has been like represented by different experts, right? One line of thought said that average number of employees would be number of employees during first of a month and number of employees during last of a month divided by 2. So that is how they calculated average number of employees, right? Another way of calculating average number of employees was somebody said number of employees as on 15th of the month, we should take it as average number of employees. So one of the attrition formula or employee formula can be number of employees who left the workforce divided by average number of employees, and average number of employees can be first of month, last of month divided by 2. Another one can be average number of employees in as on a number of employees as on 15th of the month, and that count is considered as average number of employees. I always suggest, and CHRMP always suggest that why do we need these compromises? Because each one of it is not the right way of representing. And now with HRIS softwares and with technology, I think average number, your headcount daily can can come across. So if you are implementing a HRIS, or if you're implementing something in your organization, or otherwise also, if you are using Excel and you're on your own doing it, I think there are tools which have made it really, really easy for you to have average headcount, exact headcount every day of the month. And why not divide it by 30 and have the exact average number of employees, rather than making these compromises in terms of first of month plus last of month divided by 2, or as on 15th, what's the headcount, right? So attrition rate is a very, very important thing, because we are tracking employee turnover, right? And by tracking employee turnover, we would be able to track retention, right? So that directly gets linked to retention. So knowing this formula is very, very important. Right. Now, another thing that comes with handy is the cost of attrition, right? So when we talk about retention, we also have to understand what is the cost involved, and cost involved is very, very high. It's very, very high, right? So when we talk about hiring cost is not that easy, right? A consultant today is charging 1 month's salary almost, right? Or 8.36 to 12.36 of total salary, which means 1 to 1.5 months salary, right? So if somebody is being paid $100,000 or $12 lakh, you are paying literally $1 lakh, or you are literally giving that much as the hiring cost. Not only that, your advertising cost, etc. All these costs that is involved in hiring is quite high, right? And then you have training costs, and then you have productivity lost if there was there was unfilled time, which means you could not find a replacement in time, or even if you find somebody in time, then immediately nobody becomes productive. So it takes little time. In fact, one of the metric that is used to track this is called time to productivity. In HR analytics, that is also a very important metric. So you go about doing that. Then you have onboarding costs, and then you have salary costs, and you have other costs like HR admin costs. No, this is huge cost. And if we are talking about your average turnover rate to be 18%, 20%, 15%, imagine if 1 lakh people or 100,000 people is the total number of employees. And if we are talking about 18 or 20% attrition rate, we are talking about 20% people quitting who need to be replaced. This is huge, huge, huge cost, right? So when we talk about cost of attrition, we have to understand how exactly that is also calculated. Another very important metric when it comes to driving retention, right? This cost of attrition is also very, very important. So when we talk about cost of attrition, we put all the cost element on one end, which is hiring cost plus onboarding cost plus unfilled time, which means productivity lost, plus training and development cost, plus salary differential. What is salary differential? A lot of times when you are hiring for a position, you end up paying the next person more, which means if X was working with you, you were paying him $10,000. If somebody new joins, you may pay him, mostly it happens that you may end up paying him $11,000 or $10,500. So that is something that always happens. So salary differential plus other cost. This is the total cost that we are talking about. Other costs can have HR admin costs or some other costs that we are talking about, all this that comes across, right? And then you multiply it by number of employees into annual turnover percentage, right? So whatever your annual turnover percentage is, if it's 15%, 20%, 30%, 8%, 12%, 16%, whatever it is, you multiply it, and that's how cost of attrition is calculated. Annual cost of attrition is calculated. If you are talking about monthly or quarterly cost of attrition, everything would remain the same. The only thing that would change is it would become quarterly turnover percentage, or it would become a monthly turnover percentage, right? But everything else would remain the same. And this is how cost of attrition is calculated, right? So when we talk about all these elements, I think we have to also understand that attrition is happening because of various reasons, right? And people are quitting because of various reasons. So these are not the only two metrics that we should be worried about in HR analytics to go about tracking attrition. We should be worried about other things also which impacts. For example, if there is a spike in absenteeism rate, right? If there is a drop in net promoter score rates, right? If there is a hike in talent turnover rate, and if there is a drop in job alignment rate, these all have direct link with retention, which means attrition rates going high can be for various reasons, but some metrics which actually impact these elements are absenteeism, NPS, talent, and job alignment. There can be more as well, but I'm just giving you a few examples here. Right? We have lack of time here, so I just want to, for example, if you are seeing absenteeism rate increasing month on month or quarter on quarter, you can expect that more absenteeism can lead to, and there can be overlap between absenteeism and attrition, right? What is NPS score? Net Promoter Score. You normally do it in sales. Customer satisfaction. Would you recommend this this company to somebody else? A question like this is asked, and it is calculated like number of promoters minus number of detractors divided by number of respondents. If you watch a movie, you love it, you will go and promote it. If you hate a movie, you'll stop 10 people from going in. So you have promoters and you have detractors, right? So if you go about calculating that, you get to know if your net promoter score is good, 80% and more, you can expect attrition to come down, right? Similarly, talent turnover. Now, talent turnover is people who are high potential and high performing. If they are leaving, that's a real reason to worry. So you have to also keep a track on that, right? And then you have job alignment rates, right? A lot of times job dissatisfaction leads to attrition. That is also a reason, right? And if all the activity that the person is doing is not necessarily linked to what he is being reviewed on what his performance is being reviewed on, then that would lead to job dissatisfaction. So you calculate job alignment rate as well, where number of work activities linked to KPIs or goals gets divided by total number of work activities involved, and that gives you an average of what job alignment rate looks like. And if it is dropping down, then you can consider that there is dissatisfaction, and that can be also reason. So these are all very, very important parameters that we need to think in terms of attrition. A lot of times, a lot of HR professionals, HR analytics professionals miss on key elements like this when it comes to driving retention, right? Now, again, the moment you get into the reason of driving. So in the first part, what I've told you is about calculating attrition rates and also cost of attrition, which are very, very important. And then I have talked about aligned metrics, which should be tracked in terms of driving retention. But then how do we solve the problem of retention, right? How do we solve the problem? I mean, how do we enhance the retention and solve the problem of high attrition? So for that, we have to dig deeper into why people are leaving. So you need to run analytics, you need to understand what is happening, how it is happening, etc. And once you start doing that, you will, let's say, you will get to know the reasons why people are leaving. For example, Gallup suggests that in a particular industry, 32% people are leaving because they are looking at career advancement and promotional opportunity. 22% are leaving because of pay and benefits. 20% are leaving into lack of fit of job. 17% is leaving into management and general work environment. 8% is because they find it inflexible, or reasons are flexibility and scheduling. And 2% are leaving because of job security issues. So these are the leaving why people are leaving, right? The moment through good analytics. Now, how that analytics is done, I think it's a long process. We discussed this in our certification, but then it's a long process. So the way we can go about right now understanding is that what outcome this analytics is given and how exactly we understand this outcome to go about churning this across, right? So when we talk about all these elements in terms of career advancement, pay benefits, we have first visibility that we need in terms of solving something, right? Because now, if you have to look at solving something or understand how exactly we need to go about solving, we have first level of information that is there with us. And the moment we have first level of information, we know we are moving in the right direction, because this is what would help us drive retention and reduce attrition in organization. But a lot of times people make this mistake. And again, I reiterate, I've seen in my consulting experience, a lot of HR professionals making this key mistake of trusting the first level of data and not digging deeper. And the moment you just look at this data and start working on solution, you miss on some certain things, right? And let me give you an example. So for example, when we are looking at this, we see management and general work environment is 17%. My God, 17% for a reason like this is huge. So what is causing this dissatisfaction? So a lot of times management and general work environment is largely about, there is a saying, your job is as good as your boss, right? So it's largely about your interpersonal relationship with your superiors, with your colleagues, etc. So if you want to break it down into more, then you need to break it down, because that's when you'll be able to take better and intelligent decision if you have to look at solving this problem. So for example, if you break it down further, you realize that when it comes to manager related reasons that causes employee to leave, 19% is because people are not supportive, 60% is that you do not communicate effectively, the leaders do not communicate effectively, 14% feel there has been biasness and unfairness, 12% is because they don't give constructive feedback, 11% is they don't appreciate or recognize me, 11% is they are rude, they are abusive, 6% does not involve in team decisions, doesn't help me grow is 5%, and others is 6%. How did we get this data? We collected this data. You can source agency out and tell them to go about doing it for you, or through good intelligent exit interview forms and good employee surveys and secure methodologies and without names inputs that you get in terms of making it a serious effort in terms of collecting this data. You can, I mean, HRs do feel it challenging at times. How do we do it? But if that's the challenge, that is not that big a challenge to solve. But then you are able to do it. And the moment you have this second set of information, I think you are in much better position to take a call on. Because now if it is about solving 17% and bringing it down, you know what that 17% is all about. You know that it is because of people being not supportive, not communicating, biasness, etc. And then through cultural intervention, through policy interventions, through training interventions, you can go about solving that. Very important aspect is something that we need to not overlook while driving retention, right? Now, to manage employee turnover, let's understand that even to get to these data that we are talking about, right? Or even to when we have to apply matrix, I've seen again a lot of HR professionals just doing some basic work. What is attrition rate? Calculate attrition rate and give to management. Is that challenging enough? Is that analytics? Right? Analytics. The reason is to solve problems, to work on improvement areas for the business, right? So in that, we have to understand that even when it comes to applying a metric, like a primary metric, like what we covered as attrition rate, it's important that we do not only in a generic way apply it. We should make it specific and we should make it targeted, which means if we are talking about turnover rate, we have to make it specific in terms of what is the decrease in turnover. We can link it to our KPIs and or business goals and tell them that there has been a consistent decrease in turnover or increase in turnover, and that is not conducive, etc. Corrective step needs to be taken. But making it specific would always help. Making it targeted in terms of a specific group of people, let's say salespeople who are high performing and they are leaving in the first year, it's a reason to worry because so much hiring costs, onboarding costs, all of that has gone. And these are good high performing people. Why are they quitting? So this decreased turnover of our top performers who were rated outstanding and exceptional in their first year of tenure in the sales department is a targeted primary metric, right? It is a very important. Attention to detail is very important when it comes to employee turnover or when it comes to attrition or when it comes to driving retention. Otherwise, you will not be able to pull data and understand data and calculate data and run the whole thing up, right? So that becomes very important. And not only that, I think it's also important you somewhere see the pattern of why people are quitting. Now, like for example, we got to know job security fears, other fears, career progression, but there can be more reasons as well, right? For example, there can be attrition trends specific to female employees and male employees. It can be specific to distance from office. It can be specific to a particular recruitment channel that you are using. It can be specific to engagement scores that we are talking about. It can be specific to demographics. For example, to have a broader understanding, you need to understand that it's not only turnover rate, it can be turnover rate of millennials, it can be turnover rate of manager or department, it can be turnover rate of male and female. All this is something that can come across, right? And then if you go about seeing the top 5 reasons in your organization for attrition and a trend in last 3 or 4 or 5 years, then you should be able to track it and you should be able to understand it and you should be able to see it and you should be able to solve it. Very important, guys, right? Everyone with me? Everyone understanding? Are we going fine? Great. Wonderful. Great. Right? So when we are talking about driving attrition, I think we have to get deeper into the skin of things and to be able to solve that across, right? Now, let me quickly take an example here so that you are able to understand and suggest whether retention initiatives should be taken or not, right? And when we talk about this, I think we will talk about a retention ROI calculation, right? ROI calculations are simple, very, very easy. For example, ROI formula is net benefit divided by total cost into 100. Net benefit is nothing but total benefit minus total cost, right? For example, if we are buying something for $100 and selling for $250, we are talking about net benefit being 250 minus 100, which is 150, and total cost being 100. So ROI is 150 divided by 100 into 100, which is 150%. Now, when we talk about ROI calculation, remember the world is moving towards not post ROI calculations, but pre-ROI calculations, which means in analytics, I should be able to calculate first and tell the business, go ahead and do it, or tell the business, don't go ahead and do it, doesn't look promising, right? So how do we do that, right? So we go about collecting this data and look at this case. What is it saying? It's saying that a long-term training program is expected to reduce the attrition in your company by 5%. The total cost of attrition is $12 lakh in the previous year. Training and coaching costs is about $40,000. A total of 15 managers will participate in this training for 8 hours for 12 months. It's a long-term program. So 15 managers are participating for 8 hours for 12 months. And cost for this benefit is about $50 per hour. I mean, average pay per manager is $50 per hour. And the benefits in terms of attrition can be seen up to 3 years, Calculate the ROI, and what would your advice be? So you have to again calculate the net benefit, total benefits. You have to calculate the total cost. You have to calculate the net benefits. You have to divide net benefit by total cost, and that's how you would go about solving this. So, for example, when we talk about total cost, it is very, very simple. What is given is the training and coaching cost is about $40,000 per annum. And when you talk about 15 managers, 8 hours per month into 12 months into $50, that is the data given. 15 managers will attend 8 hours a month for 12 months training program on attrition reduction into 50. And I think it's a long-term program because you could see all the reasons managers need to improve on. They are not supportive, they are biased, they are not they're rude, they're this. So, I think they would go about covering all that across into $50, and we are talking about $72,000 as the total salary cost for these managers, as $50 per hour is given, and it gets multiplied by 12 into 8 into 15. So total is $112,000. When we talk about total benefits, we are talking about 5% of attrition cost is the benefit. So we are talking about $12 lakh, and we are benefiting by 5% through this training program, which means it is $60,000 that we are benefiting for. But what is also given is that this benefit, because we are training these managers, these benefit will stay with you for 3 years, which means it would not have a short-term impact. It would have a long-term impact or a mid-term impact, right? Which means now total benefit is 60,000 into 3. That is very, very clearly mentioned in the question, right? So you have benefit, but we are talking about this whole element, and that's when we go about sharing this. So what happens then? If you look at what happens, we go about then calculating. Let me share a new screen and let me tell you. So we are talking about 1 lakh, total benefits being 1,80,000 and total cost being so it is total benefit minus total cost is your net benefit, isn't it? Is your net benefit. Your net benefit is this. So it is 1,80,000 minus 1,12,000, right? Which is 1,62,000, isn't it? It is $62,000 is your net benefit. And when we talk about ROI, we are talking about net benefit divided by total cost, isn't it? That is what we are talking about, which means we are talking about 62,000 being 62,000 divided by 1,12,000 into 100, isn't it? Into 100. That is what we are talking about, right? So we are talking about 62,000 divided by 1,12,000 into 100. That is what we are talking about, which technically means we are talking about a 55% ROI. So ROI is about 55%. ROI is 55%. Now it's a challenging thing, right? Because when we talk about ROI being 55%, we have to understand that this is a close call that organization has to go about taking when it comes to ROI being 55%, because 55% ROI might not be that good as you would want it to be, right? Isn't it? That is not something which is as good that you would want it to be, right? Let me quickly share the screen again. I think I have unshared my screen. Let me. Right. So we are talking about, 55%, but still it's positive. And I think anything above 50 can be considered. So you can advise the business probably to go ahead, because anything which is driving attrition, even by 5%, which is quite a good amount, 20%, 5%, and then there would be other productivity elements that we have not gone about really considering. We are largely considering only cost. So it is a good go ahead when it comes to ROI calculation, right? So this is very, very important that we are able to understand that decisions like this can also be taken, right? Now this is what we have discussed, guys, so far. What we have discussed so far is we have busted some myths about math, about programming, about is HR relevant to your current role or not. We have talked about differentiating between analysis and analytics. We have talked about retention, and we have related it with employee turnover or attrition and reducing attrition. We have calculated how attrition rates are calculated and total cost of attrition is there. Then we have talked about what are the other metrics which should get linked with this for a better understanding. And then we have talked about all these elements which are very, very important in terms of digging deeper into it to be able to understand the reasons and then break down that reason. For example, manager reason is broken down, and then an ROI is calculated for that reason, and you tell the business to go ahead with the training program or not go ahead with the training program in terms of solving this across. So if you look at, we have gone about covering an entire cycle of what a good analytic person would do in terms of advising a business, driving retention, which is very, very important, right? So with this, when we talk about why organizations are interested in driving analytics, $1 is giving them 13% results, right? So whether it's customer analytics, whether it's business analytics, whether it's data analytics, whether it's HR analytics, organizations ready to spend, which means they would want people who have these skills. And not only that, look at what is the future of HR analytics we are talking about. We are talking about, and this is pre-COVID data, 7 out of 10 roles would need HR analytics. 68% of MNCs would have a separate HR analytics COE by 2025. And this was pre-COVID data for 2025. I'm sure with what has happened in between and how organizations have gone digital, this is going to this is going to happen much sooner. And analytical skill would be a key element when it comes to organization taking shape, right? And because we are talking about this whole thing, seeing an early turnover in terms of, sorry, not early turnover, but it happening early. Because of the pandemic situation that we all are in, the whole world is in, something that I think last 3 or 4 generations wouldn't have seen, right? We are talking about a crisis situation. And I think that brings me to this very, very important aspect of, are we seeing opportunity in our crisis? Because if we are seeing opportunity in our crisis, then what are we doing to deal with a crisis like this? Are we sitting and watching and we are seeing things unfold, or we are doing some action, we are taking some initiative, right? We belong to knowledge industry. We belong to industry where learning is the key, knowing is the key. Excellence is driven by knowledge and skill and the competencies that you possess, right? So what has been our investment in ourselves, right? To be able to stand out in a situation where there are job losses and there are companies losing business and there are people losing jobs. What is our investment on ourselves? Have we done something or have we not done something, right? And I think the answer to this is all of us need to ask ourselves, do we stand out or we are part of crowd? Because if we stand out, I think we should then know what the next gen skill looks like, and we should be able to master them, right? And in HR at least, if you are able to get into consulting and a solutioning role, which largely is driven by HR analytics, you could see this. I mean, if you could do this for a business, a snippet of what I showed was what is retention and what is attrition and how is it calculated and what it gets impacted and how do you dig deeper into it and how do you get the second layer of information and then how do you suggest a solution and whether you advise a business to go ahead with or not is something that you saw. If you're able, so this is strategic HR. If you are able to get into this solutioning and consulting role, I think you're invaluable. You will have a job no matter what, you will have a hike no matter what, you would have a promotion no matter what, you would get what you want in even in crisis situations. In fact, you would grow faster because if analytics is a next gen skill, which means people who start early would reach miles rather than people who start late, right? If anybody follows F1, they would realize that the pole position who wins is the person who wins mostly, right? The F1 races, right? So it's about starting that early. If you're able to start early, you are going to win. There is no doubt about that, right? Software engineers, telecom engineers 10, 15, 20 years back decided that they would get into software engineering, into this technology, or the telecom engineers decided that 4G and 5G is something that they would work on, and they are CEOs, head of departments and doing these things. So if anybody feels stuck in career, it's largely because you have not been able to visualize and achieve what lies ahead for you, right? And standing out is the key. Getting into solutioning and consulting role is the key, and becoming so valuable that you become invaluable is the key. And that is by investing in self, guys. And for that, I have this wonderful certification.
Just give me a moment, guys. We have a we have a revised syllabus, so I have to share the new presentation. So yes, so we are talking about a future ready program, and when I say future ready, it's not exactly future ready. As I told you, 7 out of 10 designations require analytics, and if you look at best of companies, we are talking about them already talking about HR analytics, right? And this is a very, very well done certification. So it has workshop, it has capstone project, it has exposure to tools, it has validation. And each vertical, whichever vertical you pick up, whether it's introduction or analytics tool and implementation, or we are talking about structure and journey, all of it would have specific learning outcomes, right? Which means by end of the module, by end of the topic, you would have these things that you would definitely be able to do. So it's a 3-month certification, takes about 12 weeks. Now, for example, when we are talking about these elements, you are able to gauge how HRBP and HR analytics are driving changing the face of human resource management. We are talking about making you learn various analytics models like maturity, capability, Deloitte, SAP, Gartner, etc. We are making you learn how prediction and prescription works in human resource analytics, which is very, very important, right? Because all this while HRs have been largely reporting, but here we are talking about them moving into a solutioning role. And that is something that you learn in these modules. You have talent acquisition analytics and workload analytics, where you have definite learning outcomes, where you understand that talent acquisition is not about closing a position, right? And when you look at HR analytics aspect, the data is not about data from position open to position close, but from job rollout to job success. So how exactly you go about measuring this entire element, right? You learn this wonderful model of efficiency, effectiveness, and impact, which completely makes the entire talent acquisition process extremely measurable. You learn how to reduce offer drop rates, cost of hire, source of hire. In fact, in the last batch, I remember in IT industry in India right now, there is not only in India, world over, I think there is heavy attrition and heavy demand. And post attending our module, I think one of our students was able to successfully apply it in their current segment. and was able to reduce attrition rate, which was very, very interesting, right? Or no, not reduce attrition rate, actually reduce offer drop rates, right? So number of offers that were being made, that is something that, and people were not really joining after getting the offer. That was reduced, which is like an achievement, right? You are able to take database decisions based for acquisition, hiring, etc. All that is something that you learn. You learn KPI and performance management analytics. There are definite learning outcomes here as well. You learn what to measure. You learn creating an organizational scorecard. You learn matrix application. You learn predictable performance being driven. You have talent development analytics and succession planning. You learn how Kirkpatrick L1, L2, L3 works. You learn how ROI, a part of ROI is something that we discuss, but predictive ROI is something that you learn. You learn the 9-box methodology. All that is something that you learn here. Employee engagement analytics. There are again definite takeaways. You learn how how employee engagement is done, how employee life cycle ELTV works. You learn the 2 A's, which are very, very important. You also learn managing cost of attrition and cost of absenteeism and calculating all of it, and a part of it what we discussed today, in fact, right? Then you have compensation analytics is something new that also talks about creating pay parity, being able to drive competency scorecards for salary benchmarking. It also talks about balancing internal, external, and individual equity, and also how to read salary surveys. Very, very interesting, actually, is something that happens. And then you have data and metrics. This also makes you learn some very, very interesting aspects where you learn how so matrix can be created, right? You should be able to create matrix, because a lot of times it's not as simple as attrition formula, which is universally applicable. A lot of times you're measuring business activity, and those business activities are specific to the organization, which means a metric which can be true for one organization may not be true for another organization, because the way activities are happening or business activities are being driven is different from one organization to another organization, right? So you learn how to not only use existing metrics, but also create new metrics, which is very, very powerful experience. And then we are talking about Tableau. You learn how to create beautiful dashboards. There are some very, very interesting data representation that you can go about doing. And you are able to then do data analysis. You are able to bring in the element of business intelligence into it. All this is something that you are able to do. And then we have a validation, CHRMP certification partners is Pearson VUE and Mercer Metal. So you get digital badge, you get certificate of achievement with unique certification code, something that we go about maintaining. We are talking about people giving us very good inputs in terms of how they have gone about attending the session, from best of companies, whether it's Mukund from Amazon, Joanna for United Nations. Just go and type CHRMP in LinkedIn, choose people, you would be able to see CHRMPs all across the globe, and you can become part of this group. And now we have a batch starting from 5th of December, right? So this is the year-end batch, and we have a Black Friday fee waiver also running right now. You can go to chrmp.com. You can see that fee waiver. It is exclusive only for the December batch, which is starting on 5th of December. We have a break in between for Christmas, but otherwise the entire session is running, and it's getting over on 6th of March. All the session recordings would be made available to you. These are times that are mentioned are Indian Standard Time, right? So you can look at this Indian Standard Time, and you can go about choosing it. People from different parts of the globe attend. So people from Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, Australia, Europe, etc. We are seeing people attending. And if you look at Middle East and Europe, it ranges, the time difference is about 2 to 4 hours, 5 hours before. Africa is 4 to 6 hours before. Southeast Asia is 1.5 to 3 hours ahead. So yes, everybody are able to attend these sessions because largely they are happening on Sundays, and they are happening at a time which is convenient more or less convenient for everyone. So yes, you can look at starting this up, and you can benefit from the wonderful 30% fee waiver, right? So if you go to the website, which is there, www.chrmp.com, you will be able to see the 30% fee waiver. It's being highlighted, and it is for Black Friday. It is applicable till 3rd of December. And 5th is when the batch is starting. So once you register, you can go, you will get, you'll attend a small orientation, which would tell you about the certification on Thursday. That's not a mandatory class, but Sunday is when the session starts, because everything runs out of CHRMP Academy. So how do you register for events, downloading apps, all that is something that is taught to you on Thursday. Any which way you would learn about it as we talk. But yes, you can look at taking up this certification. And as I said, you have a fee waiver, so benefit out of it, and start your journey with the certification in HR analytics with us, right? Any doubts, any questions, anybody would like to ask? Please feel free to ask your doubts or your questions. Any doubts? You can raise your hand as well, and I can help you with giving you mic access so that you're able to talk to me. Anyone? Any doubts? Any questions? Anyone? Yes, Aisha. I know Friday and Saturday is something that happens, but as you know, we have a global alumni. Most of them prefer it on Sunday. I understand. Yeah, it's 12 weekends that we are talking about. Try taking permission from your organization if that's possible, right? So you can see that we have this 30% fee waiver, which is running, right? And you can register on chrmp.com. That is something that you can do. And you can go about starting. You have details also given, the Future Ready program, which is HR analytics. You can go and see, and whatever I spoke to you about, you can have that conversation, and you can create that understanding in terms of what are you going to learn. And you can also chat with us, talk to us. That is something that you can do. You can look at alumni. So that is something that you can also do it. Yeah. Any doubts, any questions anybody would like to ask? Kehinde, yes, you would get a mail with the recording. Yeah. So don't worry. You'd be getting a mail with the recording soon. Any doubts, any questions, anyone? This is purely online, Sangeet, and I think it's in fact the number of times I have students asking that, will I be able to learn online or not? Let me tell you that the kind of exposure instructor-led, expert-led training in online can give, especially for a topic like this, is invaluable. Imagine if, let's say, you were in one of the cities and you had 10 or 15 or 20 participants who are attending a certification, and all of them are from the same city, and all of them are from the same industry or similar industries or similar way of executing HR practices. Versus online classroom where you have participants from 5 to 10 different countries, from 10 different industries, being given an opportunity to be in a breakout room with a case study that is being given to you, and you have to go about solving it in a team. And then when you come back, you have 3 other teams who are presenting their solutions, and you are presenting your solutions. And this cannot be replicated in a classroom, right? It cannot be replicated in a physical classroom, right? So this is not self-paced program, which means it is not video recordings that we are talking about with quizzes, etc. It is instructor led. So it's an online where, just like you're attending this webinar, there would be a class that would be happening, but everybody can see everyone, and they can interact, and cameras on, mics on, and interactions on. So it's very, very, very powerful way of learning Sangeet. Yeah, the kind of exposure that you get in a diverse classroom, it's very, very difficult to replicate, right? Any doubts, any questions, anyone? Anybody would like to ask? Please feel free to ask. So you can see the course fee is 42,834. However, if you go on this, you would be able to see the course fee being 29,983, which is the 30% fee waiver that we are talking about, right? So that is something that you can really do, right? You're also getting a 3-month free CPD membership along with this. That also is being given to you. So don't forget to choose this option when you are registering, because that would really help you learn a lot of things, right? CPD membership has so much of information in it, right? So you can also benefit out of that. Any doubts, any questions, anyone? USD, it would cost you 427, Fiona. 610 is the actual price. So if you go to chrmp.com, I would request just go to chrmp.com right now, and you'd be able to see USD pricing whichever part of the world you are in, right? I'm just typing it in. Just go to this website and just click on it, and you would be able to see USD pricing. And when you click on register now, you would be able to see the revised pricing as well. So do not register from the page here. Please register from the Black Friday fee waiver if you are looking at registering, right? Welcome. Any doubts, any questions, anyone? Anybody would like to ask? Okay, wonderful. I think I hope you guys liked the session and hope you found it interesting. It was just 1 hour of Connect, and imagine what a 12-week Connect can do. There is so much to learn and implement in your respective jobs. And this is feedback from participants that they have been able to get promotions, revise salaries, better opportunities, and even save their respective jobs, right, by learning analytics. So it's very, very relevant to how you are looking at shaping up your career forward. And I look forward to having you guys on board. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a